Hey listeners, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of the creators at Enrollify, and I want to take just a moment to tell you about why I love I Want to Work There, a podcast hosted by Eddie Francis. In an era where attracting and keeping talent is more crucial and complex than ever, I Want to Work There dives deep into how colleges and universities can stand out as top employers. Whether you're involved in HR, leadership, or just keen on the dynamics of higher ed employment, this podcast is your new go-to resource. Join Eddie Francis as he tackles the pressing issues of employee recruitment and retention and offers actionable insights for positioning your institution as an employer where everyone wants to work. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search I Want to Work There wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. Even though I've been exploring generative AI since January of 2023, I still feel like I'm only scratching the surface on what these powerful tools can do. In this episode, I talk with Claire Brady, president of Glass Half Full Consulting, about everything that she uses generative AI for and the ways that she sees generative AI as being useful for enhancing the student experience. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, a podcast that empowers higher ed marketers to bring innovation, creativity, and excellence to their work. I'm your host, Jaime Hunt. Join me every 2 weeks for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education marketing. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher educational professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. I am so happy to be here with Claire Brady, who's the president of Glass Half Full Consulting. Claire, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm so excited. We've been talking about this for a couple of months, but I was going to say getting our schedules aligned was a challenge,
Right.
but it's all my fault. I've been the difficult one. But I've been looking forward to this conversation so much because Claire is bringing a different perspective to AI in higher education. But in order for us to really explore what that is, first, Claire, can you tell us about your higher ed journey?
Sure. So I'm a lifer. I started as an RA at Michigan State University. I was a really active student leader and eventually worked my first job in housing. Many of us grew up in housing. Worked the first half of my career in the Midwest at Alma College, Michigan State University, and the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I spent the second half or the next half of my career in Florida. Prior to coming to Florida, I'd worked in a variety of roles from housing to career services, advising, just a variety of kind of specialist roles. And then when I moved to Florida, I moved into a dean of students role at a community college. It was my first foray into the community college environment, which I loved. I eventually became the vice president of enrollment and student affairs at Lake Sumter State College, one of the 28 community colleges in Florida. And then the next vice president gig was as the vice chancellor of student affairs at Ana G. Mendez University, which is a large university system based in Puerto Rico with campuses here in Florida, about 20,000 students in Florida. Just over a year ago, I moved into full-time consulting. I'd always done some consulting on the side, speaking and training, but my company was really taking off and I decided to go full-time. So I've been a little bit over a year full-time as a full-time consultant running my company, Glass Half Full Consulting.
I love the name of your company. It's so suits you as a person, I feel like.
Yeah.
This optimistic.
People say that to me a lot.
I bet. I am so fascinated by people who get into student affairs, and it seems like so many come through residence life, like starting as a residence assistant.
And that's changing a little bit over time. Like we're seeing a lot of folks kind of heading into the AVP and VP roles who are coming from different pathways. So I always want to tell folks that I talk to that I meet vice presidents and assistant vice presidents and dean of students who come from all different areas, including academic affairs or communications and marketing. So it's really opening up right now, which I'm kind of excited about. I think that housing gave me a great foundation of a student-centered approach. When you're in their space where they live and learn, you have a different feeling for the student experience. But I've always been grounded in that experience. And I always felt like I can handle anything. If I can handle things at 4 a.m,
Yeah.
I can handle anything.
I feel like residence assistant or residence hall director, any of those that have to do with a big group of 18 to 22-year-olds living in one space without their parents for the first time is really like you should be running for
Yeah,
president of the United
you should
States.
be. I also think like I always knew what was going on in the world, right? I never felt like a Gen Xer, like a true Gen Xer, because I always kind of knew the music that was happening. I don't recover as well from those 3 and 4 o'clock morning phone calls anymore, but it was a great experience.
Oh, that's so funny. I also as a fellow Gen Xer, I saw something that was like when you're in your 40s and somebody asks you to go to a party, it's like it better be at 3 in the afternoon or
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
going.
It better be lunch. Lunch better be included, right?
Yes, yes. Dinner's even sketchy. Well, if the title of the podcast episode in my confession didn't tell the audience what it's about, we're going to be talking about generative AI. It's been, a few episodes since we talked about this, but I would love to hear about your generative AI journey, Claire, because I bet
Sure.
it's different for everybody, it feels like.
It really is. And the interesting part is I feel like such a vanguard or a futurist in my field of student affairs, but I'm really just a nowist. I
I
always say
love
that
that.
I'm a nowist. It's here. So my generative AI journey really began when ChatGPT was released. Much like most people, right? I got curious. What is this thing I'm hearing about? I used it to help me improve my blog posts or write a better email or write a Father's Day card to my partner, like that was kind of witty. And I just used it for fun. And I was using it really for probably 6 months, just really casually. And I had a client. So about half of my business right now is AI, which is really interesting, right? The other
Wow.
half of my business, I work with presidents and cabinets on the hard and messy stuff that they need help with. So it might be a reorganization of their entire student affairs area, or it might be their student outcomes, and it might be something for accreditation. Like I work on some like the hard, messy stuff, strategic planning. And one of my clients said to me, I feel kind of left behind at the cabinet table. Everyone there seems to know about AI. And when we
Mm,
really unpack that, they probably did it, right?
hmm.
They probably were casual users like I was.
Right.
And this person said to me, I really want to become knowledgeable about what's happening in our field, how I can add value at the cabinet table with this information. Can you help me? And I was their executive coach. So just like I would help them with a staffing issue or a strategic plan, this was just another kind of way for me to do that. So I said, give me a week, is what I said to her. Give me a week. And I dug in for that week. And two things really became apparent to me in that time. One, the immense possibility,
Mm,
and two, the lack of folks in higher ed and in particular in student affairs who were really kind of planting their flag and doing this work, right?
yeah.
And so I just saw this void. And just like a lot of other times in my career, I'm an opportunist too. I love to learn. I love to try new things out, whether it was the internet or social media or some of the outcomes work. I love that stuff. Like I like the messy, hard stuff. And so I saw this void. I jumped in. I helped this one person. And then I started offering trainings and doing workshops and presenting at conferences and offering to my friends, hey, can I come talk to your staff about this? And honestly, my business really grew from there. And so right now, my AI work with institutions is really focused on helping them to explore various tools. So it might be that their registrar team or their financial aid team or their communication marketing team really want to know what tools are out there, what questions they should be asking their vendors, how they can ensure cybersecurity and privacy and student consent and all those kind of important things. I also help institutions kind of figure out their long range plan. I help them figure out their governance, their policies. One of the areas I don't specialize in, and I always want to say this, is that I often talk and work with faculty and academic leaders, but there's a whole group of folks in this area that are doing really wonderful work around kind of mitigating some of the academic integrity. How can specific disciplines leverage and harness the power of AI? That's not me, but there's some really great people out there doing that work, and I love to connect people. And then the kind of the big exciting project that I'm working on as it relates to AI, I'm collaborating with NASPA through funding through the Strata Educational Foundation. And I spent the last couple of months really exploring across the US what we're calling emerging use cases. So, folks in student affairs, in particular, in advising, career services, and student success, who have done something with AI, mostly generative AI, through at least one cycle and then collected data. And then I've also been working on forecasted use cases. So, ways that maybe other industries are using some of the tools that are out there that we could apply in student affairs, or ways that I can imagine, based on my experience and knowledge around these tools, how big data or how advanced analytics or how LLMs could be used in our field. So, I have a huge, big report coming out with NASPA and a lot of kind of affiliated programs and events, including an international convening for student affairs as it relates to AI. And then I'm hoping that that work extends into other areas like financial aid and registrar and student life and, all the things, right? Orientation, because there's a lot of interesting use cases happening around the country. They're just really hard to find right now. And then the forecasted stuff, I think, is the really exciting stuff.
So how in the world are you staying on top of all of this?
It's hard, right? Because I mean, it's
Yeah.
in the news every day, but when you actually open the articles, there isn't always a lot there, right? So I've had to really leverage my network. I mean, being a student affairs professional for almost 25 years, I have a lot of great people around the country, and I keep asking folks, who do you know? Who's using what? I ask a lot of our vendor partners, who are you working with? Where have you had success? I also moderate a group on LinkedIn called AI in Higher Education. I really encourage folks to join us. It's just a space to share what we're hearing, what we're learning, use cases, all of that stuff. But I will tell you, it took me almost 6 months to collect that information for NASPA and Strata, because at the NASPA national conference this spring, there were like less than 20 sessions focused on AI in the hundreds upon hundreds of sessions. And most of them were very early show and tell type workshops, which,
Mhm.
that's where things start, right? But it's
Yeah.
not, people don't think they're pioneers, but they are. They really
Right.
are. And so when I would say to folks, who has an emerging or pioneering use case, nobody would answer. When I say who's using AI, I'd be like, oh, we're using it predominantly
Yeah.
in kind of localized ways. One advisor, one person in the social media team, one person in athletics, using it to, improve either a communication campaign or an email or the new student orientation content. And that's where it starts, right? But what we're not seeing is kind of that broader, more enterprise use yet. It's coming. And we're seeing institutions really advance pretty quickly. So I'm having to dig pretty deep into my network and
Yeah.
ask a lot of follow-up questions like, what are you doing and what are you trying? But also, I think we need to look to other fields. The field that I'm most excited about is actually healthcare. They're kind of at the
Oh.
intersection of so many of the ethical issues that higher ed also has, right? So the
Yeah.
patient privacy, confidentiality, how do you make it predictive and prescriptive, and how do you help that last mile of healthcare, that kind of the aftercare piece, right? And so I'm really looking to healthcare for a lot of the best examples of things that we're going to be able to see and use in higher education. Wouldn't we want to make so much of our work more predictive, right? More prescriptive, more tailored? And then also they've been able to get past that hump where higher ed seems to be stuck. A lot of institutions I visit are stuck on the cheating question. And it's absolutely imperative that we talk about not only the cheating piece, which is huge, but how are these tools developed? Who was at the table? How is the privacy secured? What's their plan moving forward? We have to ask all those questions, but we have to be at the table to ask the question. And so I say to folks all the time, look to healthcare. They have some of the most stringent guidelines around patient confidentiality, cybersecurity, and they're doing it well. they also have, private equity and a lot of other kind of financial backing
Yeah.
right now, but we will benefit from their advances in education because they're so far ahead of us.
That is really, really smart. And when you mentioned the cheating thing last week, which will be a couple weeks ago now for listeners, but last week I was at the Element 451 Engage Summit, which
Right? I saw you. It was
it was
great.
amazing. And I think when I gave a talk about how to encourage a culture of AI exploration on your team, because I have found that people have a lot of reasons they're reticent.
Yeah,
Just there's people who are just intimidated. And I think the term um, prompt engineering is part of that
it's part of it.
intimidation. Like
Absolutely.
it just sounds so technical.
Yeah,
There's the intimidation of for something like ChatGPT, you're just logging into this chat box. There's
that's it.
no guidance on what to do. For things like Midjourney, the learning curve for figuring out how to use Midjourney, I
Yeah,
think is really quite steep.
I do too.
And so you have all of that, and then you have a lot of the people who are concerned about the ethics and the privacy.
Right.
But every time I give a talk, I have somebody bring up how in the world do we think we should be using it when we don't want our students using it? And that I think is a false argument.
Yeah,
We don't want students cheating to use it, but we need to be preparing our students for a work world where they're going to be likely
absolutely.
expected, if not required, to use the technology. And how do we prepare them for that? And I think I posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago that I thought that, all, in my case, marketing, higher ed jobs are going to require familiarity with generative AI within the next year.
We're already seeing it, Jamie. We're already seeing it.
Yeah.
Where employers are already asking institutions for AI ready or AI skilled employees. And if we don't start embedding it in everything from new student orientation to the gen ed curriculum to some of the other outcomes that we're tracking, I think that we're doing a disservice to the student and to their future employer.
Oh, absolutely. And we have to be preparing them, and we can't establish the guardrails around the ethical use if
Right.
we're not familiar with how to use the
Right.
tools, how they work, what their history is. And so and like you were saying, how they were developed and what biases are baked
Right.
into them.
Well, have we
Um,
done it before, right? I always go
yeah.
back to calculators and math classes. We
Yes.
couldn't imagine now not having them, right? Math faculty probably couldn't imagine now not having them. How did we embrace or not embrace the internet and social media? So many things. We already have past successes that we can look back on and say, how did we build digital literacy? We used
Right.
our librarians. Librarians
Right.
are the key here, folks. I just, we embedded them in classes and we wrote student learning outcomes related to them and we trained our faculty and we trained our staff. It's not a revolution, it's an evolution.
That is so true. And you bring up a really good point. I started college technically in 94 as a high school senior.
Love it.
And that's when the internet first started
Yeah.
being actually, was it? Yeah, it was
Yeah, it was
94
that
as a
year.
high
Yeah.
school senior.
Yeah.
And the internet started being widely available then. And I remember in my early journalism classes, they were trying to teach us how to use some of the search engines.
So sweet.
Right, and it's like Boolean search terms and all of that, and they figured out how to.
Yeah.
I'm sure
We're
there were
smart,
cheating
capable
concerns.
people. We are.
Right, right. People have PhDs, they ought to be able to figure this out.
I have a corporate client out of Nashville that I'm doing some work with, and they've had their AI task force in place for 18 months. They're
Wow,
on the
that's
third
smart.
iteration of their policy. And
Wow.
they started it in the places, they identified the places in the organization that had the most manual, most kind of repetitive, time tasky tasks, right? And it was accounts receivable, it was HR, it was onboarding. And they said, okay, we're just going to focus on those three areas. We're just going to solve as many problems as we can. And they are reporting that they're saving about 4 hours an employee a week. That's
Wow.
big, right? When you
That
multiply that
yeah.
times your entire HR team or your entire um, budget and finance team, that's a lot. That's time that you can be doing process improvements and talking to your coworkers and having a better meeting and not being so rushed. It's major. So even if you just identify those kind of real tension spots, right? And really focus right there. You can, and they're not using really expensive tools either. They're using mostly free and low cost tools. It's pretty
It's
impressive.
amazing how much time you can save.
Yeah.
I have said that the administrative bandwidth that I
Yeah.
save is, 5 to 7 hours a week. It
Yeah.
feels like
Same.
just on the simple things.
Yeah. Same way.
Um,
What
so
tools
what
do
are
you
some
love? I was going to say, what tools do you love, Jamie?
Well, I was about to ask you the same thing.
Yeah.
What are your favorite AI tools?
So constantly on my desktop, I have ChatGPT and Gemini up. Those are my two daily go-tos, and I run everything through both because I feel like they both have a different flavor and flair. ChatGPT tends to be like more comprehensive for me, but it's really wordy. And I
Mm.
think Gemini has a little more freshness to it. It's a lot more bullet points, shorter, punchier. And so what I kind of look at them both and I take the best parts of both. Um, for meeting notes, I'm currently using Otter. I've started with a couple of other tools, but I've landed on Otter. It does mostly what I want it to do. Not all the things I want it to do yet, although it's constantly having improvements. Zapier, I never know if I say that one right. Zapier is one that is really helping me to kind of align all the parts of my business, social media stuff. I love Consensus for research. That's my go-to right now. I think just has the easiest platform to use, gives me the most amount of information in a snapshot. CRM, I'm really loving Element 51 and all the kind of AI embedded pieces that are a part of that. And then like fun ones that I always show as kind of my parlor tricks in some of my trainings. I love Coloring Book Hero. I don't know why, but I love putting a school's mascot through Coloring Book Hero and kind of putting out some coloring book pages. And then I love taking really serious college presidents or vice presidents and putting their headshots through Cartoonize Yourself because it's a Pixar, right? And they just like love it. They like lose their minds. They're like, send that to me right now, right? I want to send it to my grandkids. They want to look like they're the next character in Up or something, right? But it's just like there's like fun stuff, and then I just spend a lot of time. People send me tools. I keep a list. I'm in OpenAI all the time. I mean, 30 new tools releasing every day. So I use a lot of like the data analysis tools in OpenAI and a lot of the charts and graphs that I want for a lot of the work that I do. I could just throw a lot of data in and get some really great analysis pretty quickly, within seconds. That's the way that I stay kind of fresh, is just playing around in various tools. I'm really looking forward to the day though when I don't have to keep logging into a bunch of different systems. I can't wait until things are more integrated into many of the tools that we're already using, right? So,
Yeah.
like LinkedIn Premium, right? They have an AI tool. The first couple of months, I don't know if you used it, Jamie. It was not good. It was not good the first couple of months,
I
but
have
I've seen
not.
so many improvements just in that time, right? And that's the kind of greatness of these AI tools, is that they're always learning, right? And
Yeah.
getting better. So and it's funny, the tools that I loved when I first started are different than the tools that I love now, because some companies just keep investing in kind of that R&D and some aren't, right? And I don't spend a lot of money on AI tools. A lot of people ask me that too. Like, do you spend a lot of money? I don't. I was paying for ChatGPT originally, but now that the new upgrade is here, I don't pay for it anymore. And then the tools that I do choose to pay for, they're, $8 or less or whatever it might be, right? Because oftentimes I can really use the free level, and that meets my needs. If it's like something for my business that I need a lot more bells and whistles, then I'm willing to kind of make that investment. But so many of the tools now are free, they're embedded, they're great, and they're just going to get better and better over time.
I mean, honestly, we're at the worst they're going to be.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. I keep telling people
yeah.
that, and they're still pretty great.
And if you tried something like a ChatGPT or a Gemini or a Claude 18 months ago or whatever and said, this isn't for me, isn't doing anything that I
Right.
think's good, try again.
Go back,
Um,
folks. Try it again.
yeah. I wasn't impressed at first with ChatGPT, but I saw the potential and I
Yeah.
kept trying, and finally was like, okay, I think the problem's me and my um, lack of knowledge around prompt engineering.
Well,
I
that
want to
term
call it
though,
prompt
that term
design,
just kills it,
but
right?
it does.
Dave Burris on LinkedIn Learning has some great courses, and I just took one of his courses on prompting, and it revolutionized my outputs. The way that
Absolute.
he talks about
Yes.
personas and how to be more directive. So I'm really directive. I say things like, I want this in paragraph form, or I want but this in bullet form. I want it alphabetized. I was studying for the project management exam, and I was using ChatGPT to help me get all the terminology and alphabetize it and write a succinct definition. I mean, that would have taken me hours before, right? Now it's
Yeah.
seconds. And I just gotten better. I'm the one who's getting better, right? Probably like you are. Like, I'm
Yes.
just getting better at
Yes.
knowing what I want. I'm now not having to have 2 or 3 iterations. I'm getting it in 1 or 2.
Right, right. I can't speak highly enough of the Coursera course that Vanderbilt
Yes.
University has
It's so
on
good
prompt
too.
engineering.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So
Those are 2 of
helpful.
my top. Whenever folks say to me, who should I be following? What classes should I be taking? I say those 2 folks.
That's it's tremendous, and
Yeah.
it unlocks for you so much potential in these tools.
Yeah.
I have not yet talked to someone who doesn't use 2, at least 2 of
Yeah.
those sort of general,
Yeah.
um, like,
Tools,
I
right?
use ChatGPT and Claude
Oh, the
because
Claude's your other one. Gotcha.
yeah, yeah, because I find so ChatGPT, I have so many custom GPTs that do exactly what I need them to do.
I
So
love it.
that's always my starting point. But sometimes I think Claude's not guilty of some of those, like, let's dive into the ever evolving landscape.
The
You know
ever
what I mean?
evolving landscape. Oh, can't stand it.
I know. So I feel like Claude is a little more
Cleaner that
natural
way. It's not so
language. Yeah.
cliched. Oh,
Yeah. But I've done a lot of playing. So image creation is something I'm really interested in. And there's a ton
yeah.
of ethical considerations with it. But for me, Midjourney comes out
It's the
on
best.
top. Yeah.
I actually
And
use
then,
DALL-E in my presentations to show you like what not to do, because it never does what I ask it to do. It always does something kind of a little weird. I'm
yeah.
very curious about the image generation. I don't know why 90% of images about AI are like weird lasers coming out of a robot head. It just
Yes.
so strange to me.
Yes, it's like that's our de facto
Yeah.
way of depicting AI. I no Dolly. So I did a test of like, here's a prompt, and I'm trying it in Midjourney, Dolly, and Adobe, and I did that with several different kinds of prompts. And Midjourney nails it every single time,
Oh, that's so good to
perfect.
hear.
Dolly, like people's legs are on backwards, or it's like
Spelling
this
is
is supposed to
always
look like
wrong,
yes,
I'm like,
yes,
"What?" Also, every time you ask them for an image of a college or university, it's like a large brick with like
yes.
flags flying and everyone's
Yes.
waving. I don't understand the waving part. So
And it's
funny.
always like university is spelled with like extra N's
Yes.
and a couple
Yes.
Y's. And yeah, I love
And then
it.
when you ask it to fix it, it changes the picture completely. It's a totally different
Yes.
picture, and then the spelling will be maybe fixed, but then the next word will be wrong or something.
Yes.
I can't wait. I
Yeah.
keep telling folks, give some of these tools another 6 months. You're going to be amazed.
Yes. It's gonna be tremendous. And one of my latest ones that I'm loving playing with is Suno, which
Oh yeah,
creates original music, which, again,
I
you,
love.
you have to think about the ethics of it. But I'm using it for fun. So I created a song to celebrate the 30th anniversary of my husband and I meeting each other.
Oh, I love that.
I know. And then he created, so this man, like I'm outing him for the whole internet to
I
hear,
love
but
this.
this man will not shut a door to save his life, like pantries, cabinets. And I've heard this is a
Microwave.
husband thing. Like this is like just a husband thing. But he created a song blaming it on a ghost.
Oh,
So
that's funny. Well,
now
I'll
I
tell
can
you,
yell
if
pantry
we're
ghosts.
outing our partners, I wrote a beautiful Father's Day card for Ben recently, and he said to me, "Claire, I have to tell you, that's the most beautiful card you've ever written me." And then he followed up with, "Did you use ChatGPT or Gemini?" And he was right. He was 100% right.
Ah, that's funny. I love that. So aside from, your husband's Father's Day card, what are some of your favorite generative AI use cases?
Hey there, it's Mallory, Chief Strategist of Enrollify. Higher ed is facing a leadership crisis. The demands on today's college and university leaders are skyrocketing, and talent is leaving the industry at an unprecedented rate. New leaders like you are emerging, but no one is getting the proper training to be successful. Well, Enrollify is here to change that. Our new course, Lessons in Leadership, taught by Dr. Carrie Phillips, will prepare you to be a confident, empathetic, and effective leader. From systems thinking to adaptive leadership, building culture to handling difficult decisions, this comprehensive online course is perfect for new and aspiring leaders. Don't wait. The course starts September 9th, and for a lucky group of 26 students, we have the option to add interactive sessions with Dr. Phillips for personalized guidance. Visit enrollify.org to learn more.
Well, I'm really lucky in that I just obviously wrote a large report with NASPA with about 30 really great examples, but I want to share a couple with you that I think are kind of interesting and cool, right? So NYU's Tandon School of Engineering was really struggling to recruit women into their program.
Mm.
And so they adopted various uses of virtual reality. So once the student gets admitted, they actually receive a branded Google Cardboard and a suite of tailored virtual reality apps that help them increase engagement. And what they saw was not only were they seeing a jump in the applications because they were doing some interesting things with VR for the admissions process, but now 49% of their admitted students identify as women compared to the national average of only 21%. So there's
Wow.
something very powerful about seeing yourself in an industry or a field, right? Seeing other people like you. And so I thought that was an interesting use of virtual reality. UC Berkeley and Mission College are two of many colleges that are using a new tutoring platform called Open Adaptive Tutoring or Tutor, which is OA Tutor, and it's actually open source. It has an MIT license. They've made it available for free, open source, and it can be tailored and adapted to the institutional needs. They're using it in math classes. It's about to roll out into chemistry courses. And basically, what it does is it identifies the student's prior learning and then develops a differentiated tutoring program that will fill in those skill gaps. And
That's
so that's a
amazing.
tool that we're seeing. Like UC Berkeley's big name, it's part
Hmm.
of the computational approaches to human learning research lab. But if you're not following Dr. Zachary Pardos, I would really recommend folks follow him. He's doing some incredible work. He's also doing work on transcript evaluation and transfer articulation, which takes up hours and hours and hours at every institution. It ends up being a roadblock to many transfer students and non-traditional students. And so they're doing work around trying to automate so much of the work around transfer credit articulation, which is real messy and hard. Virginia Commonwealth University does this climate text initiative where they use AI tools to create and craft a question, a kind of a compelling question for students. They use an AI tool to send that out to students, collect that data, analyze it, and then within 48 hours, they send out a climate advisory to the entire campus around how students are feeling about that particular issue. And unlike every other survey I've ever done with a student in my 25 years, the number of students who engage with that survey throughout the year actually goes up as the year goes on, which is like
Wow.
unheard of. And they're getting like an average of like 50% of the students are responding to these texts.
Whoa.
50%. You would all die for that, right? But
Yeah.
often I do a lot of work with accreditation. I do a lot of work trying to help institutions kind of do that cycle of evaluation, feedback from students, and then how you act on it. Here's a great way to show your accreditor, hey, we're not just doing the big end of the year survey or the big alumni survey. We're getting their temperature read all throughout the year. And then when we distribute that back out, now the community is more knowledgeable, but the students are seeing their voice acted on immediately, right? And they're seeing other students' voices that may be the same or different than theirs. So that's an institution I always kind of direct people to that has really, they've been doing it for multiple cycles. Another was more of like a group or a consortium of folks. So the AACC, the American Association of Community Colleges, with some funding from Dell Technologies, is helping to create AI incubators across community colleges across the nation. And so oftentimes I worked at a community college for a decade. They just don't have the resources or the bandwidth sometimes or the kind of spare cash to kind of pilot some of these things. So this consortium of institutions with support from AACC and Dell Technologies is helping to create these AI incubators, which I think is really going to help so many institutions. And that's kind of where institutions can take ideas from other fields too. Like I was mentioning healthcare earlier, and try to adapt some of those things to their context. So those are just a few examples of ways that folks are using generative AI beyond chat GPT or image generation or video or any of that stuff, which is happening massively across so many institutions and in localized ways. But there's some cool things happening out in the marketplace.
I love the idea of schools forming task forces that
Yes.
encompass multiple areas of the institution, because I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm such a big believer in bringing more voices to the table.
Right. A
And
bigger table, right?
yeah, yeah. And so having people with varying perspectives come in and share their uses, what they know, what they're seeing in their
Major.
industry, it's huge. And
I'm working with Nashville State, which is a community college in Tennessee, and they have a grant available to them through the state of Tennessee for innovative practices. And so they applied for the grant to do all types of AI training over the course of all of next academic year. So I'm going to spend a lot of time in Nashville with them and different constituent groups, from their board to students to faculty to staff, doing all kinds of AI training with them. And they got the money, they got the resources from their state as a pilot project. But I imagine that other institutions within the state of Tennessee will also benefit from that knowledge and from the work that we're going to do next year.
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I see us as, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we're sort of in the same space that we were around 1994 with the internet and
exactly.
around 2005-ish with social media.
Hmm.
And I hope that we've learned from those that we need to have a much more deliberate and intentional approach
Yeah.
to incorporating generative AI and AI in general into our workflows and into our work, because I think particularly with social media, it was the Wild West for quite a long time, and
And
people
it was
saw
like
it as
silly
something
and fun,
interns
right?
did.
But we weren't
Yes,
seeing the like
business
impact on the student
case.
experience. It was more like, well, this is
Yes.
new and interesting. I'll go to a session about it, right? But there
Yeah.
wasn't that intentionality that you're talking about for a while. It took us a while to figure out, oh, this is going to change the way that we do work
Yeah.
and we connect
And
with students.
and it was like, we can just have students do it.
Uh,
Well, that's, you know what I mean? And I
yes,
think
and
right, 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 right. So obviously you're super passionate about AI, and you said about half your business is doing AI trainings and consulting. Why is educating people on AI so important to you?
well, I think the biggest thing for me is I just see the immense possibilities that it's going to bring to our field, right? I know how much time is spent every day on manual, repetitive tasks that take away from what got us into the field in the first place, which is working directly with students. I used to tease, like, I dreamed one day when I was a little girl that I would spend half my day sending emails and the other half of my day editing documents. Like
Right.
it just wasn't my dream. And it's not for so many of our staff, right? I mean, when if you ever spend a day shadowing, say, an academic advisor, the amount of systems they have to log into, the fact that the systems aren't talking to each other, they're not integrated, to learn what they need to know about a student, they may have to log into 5 different systems. And then they have the student in front of them for 30 minutes and they spend half their time turned away from the student looking at a screen. It's
Right.
just not how we do our best work, right? So I see that community colleges, regional colleges, liberal arts universities that are low on resources and seeking new ways to impact student outcomes, improve the student experience, meet their workforce demands. This could be a game changer and will be a game changer. So as I'm seeing healthcare really embracing AI, right? I feel like that's an analog for us to look to. Um, think about going to see your doctor, right? Maybe English isn't your first language. And you see your doctor and you're able to communicate and ask questions without bringing a member of your family whose English might be better than yours. And you leave that doctor's office with your next steps, what you need to do for care once you get home in your language at your reading level.
Mm,
That's massive, right? For
yeah.
health outcomes. But where are those applications in higher ed? They're everywhere, right? That student who leaves that advising appointment, that student who goes into financial aid and may be on satisfactory academic progress warning or something, to leave there with something written at their reading level in their native language could be massive, right? So it's those little kind of examples that could have huge impact. And given the decline in funding, the loss of trust in higher ed, the looming enrollment decline, and the many challenges to our equity mission, right? I'm surprised that we're not more proactive as a field. This
Yes.
could really improve our work.
Yes.
It could make our processes faster, better, more equitable. That's all essential to us, right? So these improvements, from my perspective, are crucial for addressing issues of access, equity, student success, and workforce needs. If those aren't mission critical, I don't know what is, right?
Right.
So I just see the possibility. I'm excited. And I think the question I get asked most often is like, well, how do we even start? Where
Yeah.
do we even start? And so I've got a couple of pieces of advice I'd love to share, Jaime, if that's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
So one, I love Complete College America has a framework that I'm going to put it on a t-shirt, and I'm just going to travel in every airport in America wearing this t-shirt, right? And basically their framework is do now, do soon, and work towards. I tell that to a president and I immediately see their shoulders relax, right? So here's a variety of things you could be doing now, right? You could be doing training. You could decide an AI lead. You could decide your AI governance. You could write a basic policy. Guess what? There's thousands out there. You don't have to recreate that, right? You could ask your managers to use ChatGPT to write a better performance review. You could decide that you're going to create GPTs. There's a lot of things you could do right now that don't require significant training and or resources. They just require the time and the space and the willingness, right? And then there's those kind of do soon things, right? We know that very soon we're going to be able to analyze large data sets in ways we haven't before. So think about that performance appraisal that you've just written in a much better fashion because you've used one of these tools, right? Maybe at the end of the year, HR is going to anonymize all of those performance appraisals and they're going to analyze them and they're going to develop next year's professional development based on what was actually in the performance appraisals. What were the areas that needed the most work as an institution, right? You could do that.
It's
real easy.
It's going to be
turn
right.
around.
It's going to be wild, right?
Right. And then this idea of work toward, like, what do you need to do? I have an institution that I'm working with that tells me that criminal justice is their most popular workforce program and everybody in the entire state knows about it, right? And so I put into ChatGPT, I'm a high school student living in Florida. I'm interested in studying criminal justice at a community college. Can you help me? No matter which tool I used, I could not get them to say this institution's name. It told me every other institution in Florida, but not this institution. Well, we went to their website. Their criminal justice program is 6 clicks into their website.
Wow.
Right? It's full of PDFs and it's full of video. And generative AI is kind of sort of multimodal, but it's not quite there yet, right? It's coming. So this idea that all of your best information about your program is on a PDF means it's not going to get scraped up. And my 12-year-old is using ChatGPT as his browser. So that's how he's getting his information, right?
Wow.
And I think ChatGPT knows that, obviously, right? They took the login off for a reason, right?
Right.
And so really, one thing you could do literally right now that you could be working toward is clean up your website, get all your content. If you look at ChatGPT, if you ask them for any information about any college or university in America, 90% of the content is coming from Wikipedia. What does your Wikipedia page look like? Is it accurate? Does it have all the information you want on it? Because that's where these programs are pulling the information, right? So this idea of do now, do soon, work toward is really kind of accessible for college leaders, right? They can break things down. A couple other things I tell presidents and cabinets is you need a well-defined AI strategy or you're going to spend a lot of money paying a lot of vendors for a lot of stuff you don't need right now, right? You need a data strategy. How much of your data is sitting on somebody's computer in an Excel spreadsheet, right? Think about the high school transcript. We probably only pulled 20% of that data in, right? We're leaving a lot of data on the table, right? All those logins and registrations and workshop evaluations that we do, you could be just collecting all of that, having a cleaned up kind of data hub for your institution, right? You should determine who's in charge of AI for your institution, who's the lead person, and it can't only be the CIO. The CIO is inundated all day long with problems, right?
Right.
And so if you're looking for somebody who's really going to look at it from a revolutionary or evolutionary standpoint, it may not be the CIO. That person should be absolutely involved in that process, but it may not be that person, right? And then you need a basic policy, and then you need to be willing to change that policy over time. As an institutional leader, you need to build your competence and your confidence, right? So that means you need to be playing in the tools, trying things out, going to sessions at conferences, bringing trainers in. You need to prioritize AI literacy. It's just like digital literacy was with the web and social media. We had to learn best practices. We had to learn how to use it correctly and effectively, right? I like to reframe AI as disrupting job tasks and not eliminating jobs.
Yes.
So the work of your communications team or admissions team or financial aid team might look a little different. You're still going to need those positions and those people, right? And then I always tell folks you have to center the human experience. The University of Utah has a beautiful checklist that faculty have to use if they want to use any kind of AI tool in their courses. And one of the little check off items is that it has to center the human experience, or it has to improve human connection. That's an interesting way of looking at AI, right? And
I
then
love that.
for me, I just want to focus on scaling impact and really focusing on providing tailored student support. So just like you may pick just one or two things to focus on, what's the one service that your students would really benefit from having after office hours? Okay, they ask the same 100 questions, right? So maybe you're gonna prioritize a chatbot because that's going to allow you to have services available 24/7, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you're going to decide that you want to do some type of scheduling process for advisors because your staff is spending so much time on the phone taking calls from students who are scheduling appointments. It's pick the thing that would have the greatest impact on students that you can scale and that you can tailor to the student experience. And then you can worry about all the other kind of bells and whistles later. So those are like the biggest tips that I give institutions about where to start.
To me, you mentioned AI chatbots. We rolled one of those out like in the very infancy days of
Yeah.
using AI chatbots, right?
And they're getting
And
better and better, Jaime.
it's so much better than it was then.
Yeah.
That chatbot was so revolutionary in terms of giving students 24/7 access to answers. And
Yeah.
it was so helpful to the students. It had dramatic impacts. And we actually created a admissions focused chatbot, but then a retention
I love
focused
that.
chatbot. We called it our retention
Yes.
bot to answer those questions, because it's not just incoming students that have questions. It's
No.
your current students have tons of questions,
Tons.
and and they happen after 5.
Well, Ocelot said that the highest volume is happening at midnight for all of their chatbots across the
I'm
country. I'm sleeping at midnight, folks. I don't know about all of you.
Yes.
I just love these kind of tailored chatbots I'm seeing. So just like the ones you mentioned, Georgia State's kind of powerhouse in this area, but they
Yes.
created one for summer melt. They've created for financial aid, fee payment, kind of the things that get students stuck or they don't really know where to go. I think about nursing admissions. How many questions come through
Oh
about
my
nursing
gosh.
admissions and graduate school admissions? These tailored chatbots, once you've kind of created your generic ones, the sky's the limit. But
Yes.
so many of the chatbot companies have months long waiting lists to even do a demo now. So if you're considering folks a chatbot for 25, 26, start now.
Yeah,
Start those
for sure.
conversations now.
For sure. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Element 451 has a bot, and I don't believe you're required to use their CRM to use the bot. And I've
Exactly.
done some demos of it, and it's pretty great. I know at the Engage Summit last week, Janet Spriggs, who's the president of Forsyth Tech, she gave a keynote and she discussed how their campus was using it and how transformative it has been in terms of saving manpower. And she shared a transcript of a chat that actually made me teary. The
Oh,
woman that was chatting was talking about how she hasn't been in school since 1991 and she's nervous. And she's chatting with a bot, right? And she's really nervous about whether she can do it. And the bot is encouraging her, telling her about the support opportunities that
I
she'll
love
have.
that.
And at the end, she says, "Thank you so much. Have a blessed day." And the bot replies that, "Thank you so much. You also have a blessed day."
Oh,
And it just made me tear up because it was like, this woman is so grateful for this piece of
yeah.
technology
Well, what they're
that made
even
her feel
finding, Jamie,
better.
is with mental health stuff, students are actually more willing to engage with it because they know it's a chatbot. They know
Interesting.
it's not a person. So what we're finding, USC has a chatbot. It's called Let's Talk Interactive. Let's talk about that name later, but Let's Talk Interactive. And what they're finding is students are reaching out earlier before acute crisis points around
Wow.
wellness and kind of mental health questions, and where are the resources, where they're still in a space of kind of, it's bad but not terrible, right?
Yeah.
And they know it's a robot, so they're willing to say and act, and there's all these protocols built into the chatbot that will, immediately refer a student or
Right.
whatever for more serious issues. But what they're finding is the students are willing to engage much earlier in their process, which means they're able to get help much earlier in their process and be connected to resources at the institution much earlier. So there's a
That's
lot of uses for
huge.
chatbots that I think are super exciting.
That's huge. And with our
Yeah.
mental health crisis on campus, like
Yes.
just so necessary to have solutions like
Think
that
about
for
our
students.
veterans. I mean, there's all
Right.
different types of populations. I think one group that doesn't probably get enough conversation in this AI discussion are international students. So I
Mm-hmm.
was recently working with an institution, and the faculty were telling me, no way, no how, no chat GPT in any of the courses. And we had an international student say, I was getting C's, and I'm really working hard to improve my English. It's just very hard to improve my English and do all the things I have to do with all my other courses, right?
Yeah.
And I write the paper, and then at the end I run it through ChatGPT to help me with my language. And since I started doing that, I'm getting B's and A's, right? And the
Yeah.
faculty kind of just stared and had an epiphany all of a sudden, like, wait, this is kind of like a writing center, right? I would absolutely encourage my students to go to the writing center. So can I be more open to the use of this tool at a different point in the assignment than maybe just saying no to ChatGPT, right? Because I
Right.
want the student to know how to improve their writing, right? And so it's sometimes bringing students and faculty into the same room. I did it recently with an institution. We all sat in a computer lab together with a cabinet and faculty senate and student government. And they were showing how they ideate, how they look up things, how they're using it as a search tool. And the faculty were shocked, but it was such a great experience for faculty and students alike. Safe environment, right? Share how you're using these tools. And our students are creative and adaptive and agile in a way that we don't even realize. And so that's another great tip for an institution is do a day. Do a day with
Yeah.
your cabinet and your faculty senate and your SGA and sit in a computer lab and show each other how you're using the tools and what tools you're using. I think people would be shocked. It's not
Oh,
just ChatGPT.
absolutely. I that is so exciting to me to think about. Like I said, bring more people to the table.
Yeah,
Who's using what and how are they using it? I know at the summit it was so I consider myself a relatively advanced
sure.
user, but Brian Piper was talking about a way that he uses ChatGPT, Gemini, and Claude that I was like, I can't believe I never thought about trying that.
So
Like that
smart.
that just never occurred to me to try it like that. And that's where we're at, folks. We're at the point of there's no textbooks about it because it's not textbooks take years to write.
Exactly.
This is us learning from each other. So Claire, this has been such a great conversation. What do you think is the future for generative AI in higher ed? If you could sort of like package it all up in what you think
Sure.
the future is.
I'm excited and I'm optimistic, right? I'm happy that we're seeing localized use, that we're seeing people kind of get out there, be heuristic, trial and error. I'm happy that they're supplementing their existing tools that maybe aren't doing everything they need it to do, streamlining administrative tasks and enhancing communications and providing personalized support. But what I'm forecasting is what I'm most excited about is how we're going to start to see these tools integrated into some of the biggest technology expenses we have at a campus, the enterprise
Yeah.
level stuff. So our student information systems and our learning management systems and our starfishes and our EAB navigates and all of those, where we don't have to log into a separate tool, where we can really kind of harness and leverage the power of the tools within our existing contracts. I also am really excited because I think that our capabilities are also going to grow exponentially to harvest, analyze, and use data in new ways we haven't been able to before. And then the last kind of piece I see is I think it's going to help us achieve institutional strategic goals that are going to enhance student success, support our equity initiatives, help our staff get back time, and
Mm,
get back to the real human work that is the work that we want to be doing, that we're so busy sending emails and writing reports and
yes.
analyzing data and tracking metrics and logging into 6 different systems that we just don't always have the time or bandwidth to do it. And so for me, I think the most exciting piece is that not only are we going to be able to tailor so much of our communications and services and programs to the individual student need, but we're also going to get time back for our staff to do the work, the creative work, the work that takes more kind of dreaming time, right? And it's hard to fit that in sometimes. It becomes secondary, but it really should be primary. So that's what I'm kind of most excited about.
I'm really hopeful that some of these tools will help address the burnout crisis that we have in higher ed right now. I think particularly in student affairs, but also among faculty and others, where it's the jobs are not 40-hour jobs anymore. They're so much
Right.
more than that. And if you can save 10% of your time on administrative tasks and maybe another 10% here on some other type of function, maybe that'll mean people get to go home and see
Yeah.
their families and their kids and not
Sleep a
leave the
little bit
industry.
more,
Right, right,
read that book they've been dying to read.
right. To
Yeah.
have a little bit more balanced lives. That's
Yeah.
what my big hope is for what
Me
happens.
too.
So if people are interested in talking with you, and talking with you is great, where can they find you?
I'd love to talk to folks. So the first place is my website. So drclairebrady.com. I have all my information about kind of the work that I do, whether that be kind of more general consulting, executive coaching, and especially AI trainings. I believe in like transparent pricing and all that stuff. So if you have a curiosity about what it would cost to bring trainer into your campus, either virtually or in person, all of my information is there. I'm on Instagram at Dr. Claire Brady. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I really love LinkedIn. And so you can reach out to me there. And I also would really encourage folks to join the AI and higher education LinkedIn group. That's just need to search for AI and higher education. And we're about 300 strong right now. We're only a couple of months old, but just this morning we had doctoral students reaching out, asking folks to help them with their studies. So I think that community is going to become more and more important to many of us who are just trying to really go on this journey and learn as much as we can. And I would love to hear from folks if they have any type of use cases that are working for them at their institution. I'm continuing to write and research. There's going to be a part 2 with NASPA after this large report is released. So I'm very curious in particular around records, financial aid, student life, advising, career services, student success, all of that. If you are doing something at your institution that you think is working for you, even in some very small ways, I'd love to hear about it and write about it.
That's awesome. And listeners, follow Claire. She's constantly sharing great information on LinkedIn. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Jaime Hunt, and on X a little bit, Jaime Hunt IMC, JaimeHunt IMC. My website is Solve Higher Ed. And I also do marketing focused AI training. So if that's something you're interested in, you can find me there. But until then, I'm really hoping that some folks are out there using generative AI to bust some silos. Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry best as your hosts. Learn from Mallory Wilsey, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Eddie Francis, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.